Booknerds, welcome to the Booknerds podcast. It's a Sunday, and I have read over this weekend. I have read a very sensitive book. It's a very empathetic book. As at the same time, it is so important that this book has come out. Thank you so much, Puja Changoiwala, the author, and of course, she's a journalist, award-winning journalist, and I'll tell you more about her. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Rohan. This is such a pleasure. And I love the graphics. Yeah, the introduction was so cool. I really liked it.
We have a good team. I am the least important person on this on Book Nerds, in fact. So, okay, guys, let me tell you a bit about Puja. Of course, we'll be talking about this book right here. It's called Homebound by Puja Changoiwala. And I'll tell you more about this book. As you can figure out from the cover, it is about the mass exodus that happened last year uh, after the COVID pandemic hit us, and so many migrants, I mean, lakhs and lakhs of migrants, started walking towards their homes. A little glimpse into that, but before we go ahead, let's talk about Puja a little bit. She's of course an award-winning journalist. She's super cool, so I can't figure out that she's a journalist. I couldn't figure out at all. She's super cool. I haven't met cool journalists at all, at least for the last 5 years. And of course, she has authored previously she has authored two non-fiction books. Those are Gangster on the Run and The Front Page Murderers. So she is not intense at all. I figure her work has been featured across news networks, publications, and more, including BBC, CNN, The Hindu, Guardian, National Geographic, and Al Jazeera. Um, you have covered everything, and also she has been a senior correspondent with HT, and received the International Center for Journalists COVID-19 Reporting Award and the Lardley Media Award for Gender Sensitivity, Reading Award for Excellence in Indian Journalism, and the Iceland Writers Award, among, of course, so many others. First of all, congratulations on all of this. I'm talking to you for the first time, but I'm truly honored to host you on this podcast. Let's talk about Homebound. I'll
Yes.
again show everyone the cover so that they get perspective about the book, what we are talking about here. And then, of course, I really want to ask you. It was a hard year.
Hmm.
Last year was very hard. Of course, as a privileged man, I would be like lying that I had a particularly hard year. I would
Hmm.
say that whatever you have written in this book, the hard hitting realities, the facts, those were real, adversities. First of all, a little bit about the inception of the book, and then we'll, of course, talk more.
Okay, so firstly, thank you for that elaborate introduction. You're very kind. पूरा CV पढ़ के बता दिया आपने.
We have to know about you. I mean, it's some CV, I must say.
Thank you, Rohan. So, Homebound, like everybody else, I watched the Exodus on TV. And then I thought I'll do a story about it. And then I started visiting these highways near my home. And there was this one particular woman that I saw, and I couldn't get her image out of my mind. She was about 80, 90 years old. She was leaning on a walking stick as she walked.
Yeah,
And I asked her, Dadi, ab chal loge kya?
yeah.
So she's like, I just have to go 400 kilometers. I'll manage. And she said it without stopping. Yeah.
Wow.
And I was a little this thing. I mean, where she was going,
Yeah.
there were no trains, cars, or buses. There were angry authorities. There were dangers unknown. There were people waiting to put her into prison.
Yeah.
So, how was she so determined? And then I looked around and I saw it was everywhere.
Yeah.
Nobody was sad that they had met this fate or that, they have to make this long walk home. They were
Yeah.
just determined. So, I think that was the time when I started believing that this exodus belongs to history with the great walks triggered by famines, conflicts, wars,
Yeah.
and things like that. And plus, I had reported on India's informal workforce quite a lot, and I knew
Yeah.
that कि अब बस हो गया मतलब
Right. Right.
their plight has to be blamed on decades of structural decay. I mean, the fact that they were walking home was not some. I mean, of course, it was unexpected, but then one, if you've seen the trajectory, you could imagine that they
yeah,
could have met this fate. So I wanted to seal their cold realities in ink, basically,
yeah, yeah.
and just make sure that we do not forget them again. And I think we are forgetting them already. I think as we discussed the Exodus, people have already forgotten about the Exodus. It has been wiped out of our consciousness, our memory, and I hope somewhere this book remains. This book keeps reminding, and long term में कुछ अच्छा हो. I think as a journalist, first that is our hope with every word we write, right? That maybe it will make things better for someone. As you said, we're very privileged.
Yeah, and
So,
such an apt title, of course. I mean, Homebound. It is just apt for the book. Uh,
mhm. Thank
of course, it all starts from Dharavi in Bombay, and
you.
so I really wanted to quote this part, and it's page 36, where you
Mm,
write, "This audacity to dream, irrespective of the size of one's home, is what I admire most about Dharavi." And
mm,
of course, Meher, the protagonist, is
mm,
in this case is writing to Farah.
mm,
Ambition abounds in the myriad lanes of this ghetto, each person toiling to rewrite their story, to paint their canvas with colors of their choosing. You do not give up on your home and family in the village, or move to a strange, unforgiving land if you were not chasing something. And our rickety shacks in the slum, they provide the perfect fuel for these restless flames. They offer a long, hard look at our place in the world, at who we are. They incite us to alter that place, choose who we become. It
mm,
is the story of India, and the of course the bigger issue is migration,
mm,
and which is connected to everything. I mean, we are based in Dehradun, and the exodus we had, of course,
mm,
from the Pahars was,
mm,
as kind of troubling, and
mm,
the reverse migration has also hit us. Uh,
mm.
so yeah, all that is happening. Tell us why you kind of started from Dharavi. It could have been a little bit about that. How did it start from there? The book.
I think I am very comfortable with writing about Mumbai, sorry,
Yeah,
lest I
yeah,
offend a few people. I'm very comfortable writing about Mumbai, and Dharavi is a place where I've written many stories from. So I know this city, I know the slums of this city, I know the people who live in the slums.
yeah,
So I mean, in a way, I mean, because it was the lockdown and I could not venture out to do my research, so it was honestly, it was a comfortable place for me to start, because
yeah,
I was writing fiction for the first time and I was
yeah,
very, very scared. So I wanted to have something familiar. So I think
yeah,
this Mumbai bit was my comfort zone, that I will have at least something from, because I was also discovering the journey as I wrote it.
yeah,
So that entire adventure was an adventure for me as well. So I
right,
think Dharavi was my comfort, like one place that I knew and one place that I could write about confidently. So I
yeah.
think that's why you get such an intimate portrait also of those
It
baile,
is.
of those
Yeah,
banana carts and everything, because I've been and I've seen these places for the past decade.
yeah,
So I'm very comfortable writing about them.
yeah. So tell me something. I mean, what you? This is your first fiction.
Hmm.
Did you get any mentorship or advice from anyone, or kind of casual chats with fiction authors, or perhaps the editor help you out? Of course, shout out to HarperCollins for
Yeah.
letting us go.
No, I mean, I think it was such a strange time that I felt everybody was for themselves,
Yeah,
and for help, for seeking help. I think I was relying on Google, I was relying on a few workshops, I was relying on some books. Like there's this book called Save the Cat, which I never finished reading. But yeah, I mean, there were these certain tidbits that I was picking up from somewhere. And plus, I think I was going more with my journalistic gut, because
right.
I was like, I could have fictionalized the whole thing, but not one incident in the book is fictionalized. I mean, not something that has not happened. I mean,
Yeah.
when you see when you see that chemical bath, it has happened. When you talk
Yes.
about people being locked up in milk containers over tens of kilometers, that has happened. There was a man who was eating from a dead dog on the street. So I mean,
Wow.
and plus I did a lot of research through my visits to villages and migrant families and NGOs and lawyers. It was quite extensive. So I had a lot of my material in place. Then it was about writing, organizing. or giving it a structure, organizing the content into something which is understandable and not boring. And I mean, then there are the demands of literature, but I was just sure about the content, and all I did was organize it eventually, I think.
But your journalistic streak has kind of, seeped through, and you have kind of, I mean, I won't talk too much about what is happening in the book, but it was quite refreshing, because that you in fiction generally you kind of, don't kind of break away from the plot too much. I mean, it's just a flow mostly, but you
Right.
kind of broke into, these short interviews and sort of those things.
Hmm.
It was
Hmm.
very interesting for me. Also, on page 18, I was reading that you talked about Twitter Uncle, which played a
Hmm.
major role, and sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Hmm.
So you say that for a non-refundable fee of rupees 300 per post, and I'm not aware that this is fiction or non-fiction, so I am
अरे ये
just reading.
होता है इन धारावी ऑल्सो ये होता है.
Wow,
That's
wow.
where I got this from.
Whoa. Twitter Uncle puts up people's grievances on the micro blogging site, tagging relevant authorities, egalitarian elites, and armchair revolutionaries. 6 out of 10 times he gets the job done. So this was happening at the time when the lockdown happened. So this was happening, right? 300
Yeah,
bucks
yeah.
post.
Yeah. So they thought ki, like that paragraph goes on to says that Twitter uncle believes that authorities either respond to I don't know, harsh online criticism or hard cash or something like that. And
Right.
with this whole Twitter enterprise, he's
Yeah.
exploiting the digital India fracas. No food but internet, no clothing but food, broadband, and no shelter but 4G internet. So I
Right.
think that is there, right? We have such increased internet penetration in our country, and we
Yeah.
do get responses online. So, for instance, if I for instance had this, I had to cancel some tickets and flight tickets, and according to the DGCA laws, you are supposed to refund the taxes or something like that. There's some
Right.
and the flight and the airline wouldn't do it. So I put it up on Twitter and they responded immediately. Whereas I was calling them for days,
Yeah.
they wouldn't respond. So I think that's how it works in our country now that you put it up online. There are some
Oh my God.
armchair revolutionaries who will share and reshare it, and then you have your impact. So I think
Yeah.
it's more impactful than newspapers now. The digital space.
Yes, and Twitter was exploding like anything. I mean, even during the second wave, it was
Yeah.
exploding. But even the first wave, of course, due to the migrants, suffering
Yeah.
so much. Yash Kumar is asking.
Sure.
Yash
Hmm.
Kumar is asking,
Hmm.
what made you write this book, and any of your personal experiences also involved. I mean, yeah,
No, I think as a journalist, everything. Hi, Yash. Thank you for the question. As a journalist, I think we look at everything. At least I personally look at everything. I mean, as a personal issue. I mean, that's how I got into it. Like I said, when I started seeing those portraits, I just went out on the highway to see it for myself, to really believe that there was this huge humanitarian crisis which had come to engulf us. So I did not have any personal experience, of course. I mean, I come from a very well-to-do family, and I'm extremely privileged, so I had no experience of my own. But I did go and I did see the exodus. I did speak to those migrant workers, their families, the children, the women. And the reason why this book is being narrated by a 15-year-old girl is that, we have focused on migrant men, even women to an extent, but we haven't talked about how it has affected children. How
right,
many, like, these people come from villages where many villages where schooling is not available beyond a certain grade.
yeah,
So their education has been compromised, their futures have been compromised. So that's why I said it from the perspective of a young girl, because
yeah,
we have not covered that perspective. And I thought it was so important. It was so important to give them a voice. And sorry, I'm drifting a bit, but another reason why it's being said from a 15-year-old girl's perspective is because when I met these migrant workers, and when I spoke to them, so see, for us, it was this huge crisis. But when I went to the villages and I spoke to migrant workers, to them, it was nothing. They were like,
yeah,
हाँ, like one person told me in southern Rajasthan, I think he told me, हाँ, तकलीफ हुई पर पहुंच गए घर पर. 800 किलोमीटर कुछ चले, एक दो बार पुलिस ने पकड़ा भी. And it was not a defining moment for them. And I realized that because we are so privileged, we think that
yeah,
अरे ये problem है. but to
yeah.
them it's not even a problem. So it's almost
So they didn't
childish.
have expectations, right? They didn't have
Yeah,
expectations.
exactly. That's how little they expect of us, of the government, of even God for that matter. They just believe that that is what they deserve, and their only thing is to get out of it. And like, if you see the dedication of my book, it's for
Yeah,
survivors, and they are survivors. Like they are the dreamers, they are the survivors, they
yeah,
are the fighters, and they are the ones we failed.
yeah.
So that's the story.
Yeah. Arushi is asking, why was the name Meher? I mean, it's a follow-up question, kind of. Meher
Hmm.
chosen. Why the name Meher? I
I
mean,
don't know. I
interesting.
like it. I wanted her to be a blessing, so that's
Yeah,
how Meher means blessing. So I mean, like, I just think that the entire migrant workforce is a blessing. Our country wouldn't be what it is without the workforce, right? I mean, no great country is built without the sweat and blood of these workers.
yeah,
So I think, in a nutshell, yeah, they are blessings, and that's what I wanted Meher to be.
yeah. Aditya is asking, which books did you read while or before writing this book that served as good inspiration for you? I mean, she's a journalist, but okay, you can answer this one.
I read completely irrelevant genres. So, for instance, if I'm
Yeah,
when I wrote Homebound, I read crime. So I cannot read crime and write crime, or I
yeah,
cannot
yeah, yeah,
read contemporary fiction and write contemporary, because I think it influences and it even corrupts. And I can see. I mean, I tend to, like, then plagiarize. Like, I get very scared कि इधर उधर से
yeah,
कोई
yeah,
idea आ गया. For instance, especially when you're writing fiction, you, like, if you read कि इसको, like, a protagonist finds something which finds something like a register or a diary, and it acts as a prompt, so
yeah,
that would have corrupted my writing. So I read completely irrelevant stuff. Like, I was reading about random, like, helter
yeah.
skelter about a serial killer, and like
Yeah.
completely irrelevant stuff.
That is so interesting because a lot of, I mean, sometimes I talk to authors and they say that I kind of research in the genre and stuff like that. That's
Hmm.
interesting actually, to go very organically into writing, and then when
Yeah,
you come out of it, I mean, you have not been inspired by kind of, I mean, other stuff, and
yeah,
perhaps the writing style as well. You
yeah,
could
yeah.
pick
No,
up unknowingly.
exactly. Exactly, and plus this is fiction, so I have never written fiction. So I
Yeah,
was particularly scared, and I really wanted to protect myself from getting influenced.
yeah,
So that's how I was like, नहीं, कुछ भी relevant नहीं पढ़ना. मतलब, I started some slightly contemporary fiction only. There was like some books I started, but then I just stopped reading.
yeah.
I said, I cannot do this.
Okay, I was doing my research or whatever.
Hmm.
I read the book and I was like, I was jotting down stuff, and it won't
Hmm.
end. The
Hmm.
issues you have, kind of,
Hmm.
taken head on here. I mean, there
Hmm.
is farmer suicide. There is,
Hmm.
of course, poverty. There
Hmm.
is superstition. There is, I mean, of course, the belief against the contagion.
Hmm.
And there is Corona jihad. There are so many things that you have
Hmm.
kind of, and all this
Hmm.
was actually happening, and
Yeah.
that's something which, I mean, I was like, okay, how does one deal with this and move ahead, because we have to be positive, but do
Hmm.
we forget this, and how do we deal with this now?
So, I think, first of all, commenting on that part about including many issues, I think
Yeah.
I have faced criticism also for that, because
Okay.
somebody was telling me that the Exodus is so important and that you needn't have brought those issues in.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not somebody who doesn't take criticism well, but then I was like, these issues are so integral. Like, when you
Yeah.
talk about Corona Jihad, I do not. So, the purpose of this book was to document the Exodus. And the Corona Jihad aspect was integral to it. I mean, there were people who could not get medical help
Yeah.
because they were Muslims, because we had created this entire persecution of the community after
Yeah.
that event in Delhi. So how
Yeah.
could I, if I want to provide a holistic picture, I'm going to have to, include these aspects. So, for instance, if you see any natural catastrophe, the
Yeah.
victims are always women and girl children. I mean, mostly, because I
Yeah.
think I've dismissed it in a line in the book that drunk men will first beat their wives and then sell
Yeah.
their children into
Yeah.
matrimony. Now, somebody told me that this was not necessary, and I said, no, but that happens. As a journalist, I've seen these things, I have reported
Yeah.
these things, and you cannot speak about a tragedy without covering all aspects of it. And
Yeah.
plus, there are many other aspects related to rural India also. I think I am very passionate about reporting from the fringes, about reporting from the hinterlands.
Yeah.
So I think I can never separate my writing from rural India, and I think because they are so attached to their home, we need to show various aspects of their home, where superstition thrives, where misinformation thrives, where
Yeah.
people had dug trenches so that their migrants wouldn't return to the villages. They
Yeah.
are their own family members, and yet they had dug trenches. There is misinformation. There were people quarantined inside toilets in villages. So
Wow.
you cannot dismiss these aspects, or you cannot say.
And actually, sorry to cut you off, Pooja, but
Hmm,
people haven't actually, and this was something which I was surprised also by, that
hmm,
nobody talked about this. When these
hmm,
migrants eventually reached the villages, they
hmm,
were not treated well. They were not welcomed.
hmm.
Nobody
That's
talked about this, right?
that
The
is true.
story was that these people are walking and they made
Hmm,
it and they are happy or they are dead, right?
hmm,
I mean,
hmm,
so,
hmm,
but this part, I'm
hmm,
thankful to you that you
hmm,
also mentioned that
hmm,
most people, I mean, this quarantine thing, and
hmm.
quarantine has been a, I mean, what should I say? It has been a disaster in the
Say
country.
it politely, whatever you
Yeah,
say.
politely, I'm saying that it is a disaster. So, so it is. I'm glad that you have taken this head on, and to that criticism, I would say that all these things are connected. Why would somebody migrate to Bombay to
Hmm,
Dharavi? Why would
hmm,
somebody migrate
hmm,
if they were happy in their own, sort of world?
hmm,
So it's
hmm.
all connected. And thank you
No, no,
for that.
I'm fine. I'm not sad about the criticism. I think it will make me a better writer, but it's just that
No,
I
I'm
think,
just answering the person who
yeah.
said.
No, and that was like, when I visited the villages, people were like, they were called corona carriers,
Yeah,
these people, the migrants who returned. Then
yeah,
their homes were marked with signs saying danger inside, enter
yeah,
at your own risk, and things like that. So it was not that it was not that the problems were solved once they reached their villages. They
true.
probably amplified
Yeah,
because the villagers saw them as a threat.
right.
They were not willing to take them in. So I
Yeah.
think that was very,
And in
very.
fact, there was less awareness. I mean, there was no awareness practically across the country, but
Hmm,
there must have been even less awareness. Also,
hmm,
Naren Singh is asking a relevant question, and I
hmm,
would love you to answer this. You
hmm,
don't have rural background, so
hmm,
from where you created those scenes and their sufferings, how would you kind of be empathetic towards them?
hmm. Basically, it's my reportage. I have been a journalist for about 10, 12 years now, and I
Yeah,
have reported quite a lot from rural India. So I think I do have a little bit of grip. Of course, nobody has an entire grip unless you're living there. But I do have an idea about what happens there, how people spend their days, what are the troubles, and things like that. And plus, I did a lot of research for this book. I visited villages in Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Rajasthan. I met those people, I saw their lives, I spoke to them about their troubles, I asked them how the lockdown was for them, their journeys, and many, many things. So I think the whatever background has come into the book, it comes from a lot extensive research for this book, as well as my background as a journalist, where I have reported. Stories from rural India. And as I said like 5 minutes ago, I am very passionate because I think those areas are highly neglected. Like, for instance, I just visited this village in Maharashtra. It's called Savangi. And there was this 50-word news report in the paper saying that two women, both COVID
yeah.
19 patients, were found dead in their home and nothing
Okay.
else. And I was very suspicious as to if they were COVID 19 patients, why did they not get help? And then I went to the village and I did a story, and it was about a lot of things. There was misinformation that kept the women from visiting the hospital. There was social ostracism that because of which people did not give them any help. Many many things. It's very multifaceted, and as I said, I'm very passionate about these issues. So I tend to keep visiting villages. I tend to keep writing about them. So I think
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't say I'm an authority, but I think I have a little bit of knowledge
Right.
to write about this.
Awesome. Also, in the book, you talk about the meaning of home,
Hmm.
which is at the core of what you have written.
Hmm.
Would you like to elaborate on that? the meaning of home, and what is the interpretation that the reader might take from this?
I think home to us is very home. What is home? Home is family.
Yeah,
Home is a couch, a good book, and that's
yeah,
the extent of it for us.
yeah,
But then for some people, it's like a fatal romance, right? I mean, that's what Meher also says in the book, that I do not understand this fatal romance. I do not understand why people would want to die for these four
right,
walls.
right,
But I think it's there, and I think they realize, the migrants realize the value of it more than any of us can ever do it, because they are away from their home, they are away from their family. So, for
right.
instance, if you want, I'd like to read that last it's the end where she talks about her home, and she defines home for us. And I don't, whatever I say, I cannot
Sure.
describe it as well as she does.
Yeah,
So she says, since we embarked on this journey, I've been trying to understand the idea of home, what it means to me, and why humans are willing to lose all for a few walls. I peeked inside me for answers, but I found them in those around me, in their resolutions and in their defeats. Home is where fear dies, man, where solidarity dwells, and where love begets love. It's where your smiles remain honest, where you're mothered and you're nurtured, and where you cannot bear to see the ache of others. It's where the feelings of the mind are not blunted, and where interest does not draw film across the eyes. It's where mercy does not veil her face and no heart is dead to warmth. It's where all journeys begin and end, where we all belong, where we can leave and know that we shall still belong. It gives you wings to fly, the home, and room to fall flat. It's a winter hearth, the home, a summer stream. And if that is what home means, ma'am, I wonder if this country, this world is my home. They could not be. So I think I could not describe
brilliant.
home better than she does. Yeah.
Yes, of course. It is. What was I about to say? Actually, I got a huge wind blowing in, and I got distracted. But anyways, so I wanted to talk about my final question: the
Hmm.
police brutality that happened, and the role of NGOs.
Hmm.
How effective were these NGOs during the time? Because I mean, for most of us, we were possibly following the pandemic and whatever was happening through apps, and
Hmm.
they are usually filtered sometimes.
Hmm.
They don't actually paint the real picture of what is happening on ground.
Hmm. So for NGOs, I think it was extremely challenging because the question is about the NGOs, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So it was extremely challenging because, usually with any catastrophe, the epicenter is limited. For instance, an NGO in Dharavi has a focus area of Dharavi, but here the entire city, the entire vicinity, the entire country, the entire world was the epicenter. So they had to help a lot of people. I mean, I remember there was this NGO in southern Rajasthan, and I was speaking to Mr. Rajiv Khandelwal, who runs the NGO, and he
Yeah,
was telling me that his helpline wouldn't stop ringing. I mean, he was getting calls from migrants who were stranded all over the country. Although it's a southern Rajasthan focus NGO, it was
yeah,
getting calls from everywhere because people were so desperate. They if one person got help from a certain NGO, they were telling the others, कि अरे ये लोग help कर रहे हैं, इनको phone करो.
right.
So I think, but then there was a lot. I think NGOs have done incredible work. Like there were some people who've done some really good work, and plus there was a lot of funds also that came in. So whenever I spoke to NGOs, they told me that the amount of money people have donated, the amount of goods people have donated, it has been unprecedented. So
Yeah,
while at one point we were thinking that the state is not doing enough, we
yeah,
had citizens who were doing enough. I mean, probably not enough, but doing a lot. There were NGOs which were doing a lot. So I think the exodus shook everybody, and
yeah,
not just the exodus, the entire COVID-19. I mean, there were people. So the situation was so desperate in this slum. I remember one NGO worker telling me कि मैडम दूध की गाड़ी उल्टी हो गई तो उसमें लोग जाकर उठा उठा कर लेकर आ रहे हैं दूध, बाजू
wow,
में ही कुत्ते भी वही दूध चाट कर पी रहे हैं. So people
wow.
were looking for food in dumpsters. This is in
Yeah,
Mumbai. So
yeah.
I mean, it was, I get this thing talking
I
also,
know,
but this
I
was
know.
in Mumbai, and imagine the rural areas. I mean, it was much worse. Imagine, I mean, it was much worse. But I think many people have done a lot of good work
Mm.
uh, to help each other. But yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, okay. I thought it was my final question, but I should ask this because, have we learned from all this? Because the second wave also hit, and again, there is a question of migration. I'm mostly talking about migration here. And have we learned from this? Is these the future of these, mostly undocumented workers? Is it secure? Because they can be, done away with very easily. And you have mentioned all this in the book in several cases. With, for example, the brick kiln worker you have talked about. I think it must be a true story, now knowing you for 30 minutes. But I wanted to ask you that, have we kind of, is there any change or it's the same?
So, forget the state. I would say even the migrant workers have forgotten about it. Like when we
Wow.
talk about people, like, the exodus being wiped out of public consciousness, public memory, even the workers have forgotten about it. For instance, when I visited the villages, that was October, because that was the only time I was allowed to travel, which is last October, October 2020.
Yeah,
And it had been, what, 6 months to the exodus, and
yeah,
people were already over it. Like the migrant workers were packing their bags ready to return to the cities.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, as I said, they do not. I mean, why do we not have them start a revolution? Why do we have not have them, demand their rights? Because they've just accepted that this is the
yeah,
way things
yeah,
are. Because
yeah.
they are, and it's not a small number. We have 450 million internal migrants in India.
Right,
Most of them work as daily wage laborers. They work
right.
without safety care, without paid leaves, without healthcare benefits, without social
Yeah,
security,
yeah,
without, I mean, so many die in accidents while at work. So these people have not been cushioned, and I think they're okay with that, because despite that long walk home, despite everything, I mean, many of their contractors fled. There are few workers who told me कि हमको तो वो गोडाउन में ही लॉक करके चले गए, क्योंकि उनको नहीं चाहिए
wow.
था कि हम निकल जाएं, ताकि when
Mm,
the lockdown, the restrictions ease, they could start work
mm,
again, and
right.
if they went home they might not return.
Yeah,
So there were many such things, but I think everybody is over it, people, and that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, because I wanted to document it so it cannot be easily forgotten. But I think, as I told you earlier, also you feel a little disillusioned, because
yeah.
it has already been forgotten, and you can just hope that somewhere this document will remain and it will remind. But I don't know.
It
I'm
will
slightly.
always.
I do
It will
not want to
also,
sound
yeah,
cynical,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah.
It will remind people, of course, and future authors, because it's a start.
Yeah.
I mean, if you talk about one of the biggest migrations, the partition, there have been
Mm,
like how many books on that
mm,
topic. I mean,
mm,
I recently read one. It's called
mm,
Lahore. And
mm.
there's so many
Yeah,
books
yeah.
about it. It will be written about. You have just, kick-started this sort of, revolution of sorts. Thank you so much for doing that. Of course, I loved the book, and I was not at all. I mean, I don't get depressed easily, and I
Mm,
didn't get depressed by this, because it was, kind of facing reality. This is
mm,
reality. You have to
mm,
pick up this book. It's fiction, but
mm.
it is a great combination of fiction and non-fiction. And is it 3 crore migrants that moved from different places across India?
That was I think that was the figure by June 2020. We had some 3 crore
Okay.
migrants and some half a million in the first week itself.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So, guys, pick up the book from a bookstore near you. I'm not aware about what is the availability
No,
in
it's there
bookstores.
everywhere books are sold.
They're everywhere. Okay,
It's there
great.
online, it's in bookstores, it's
Awesome.
everywhere.
Awesome. Get a copy of the book from there, from bookstores or Amazon. Post a review uh, on
Yes.
Amazon or wherever you can on social media. You can tag Puja on Twitter as well. I
Please
think
do
she
that.
would be active. Twitter uncle is always there.
No,
Thank you
actually,
so
I'm
much for
not. I'm
doing
quite
this.
opposed to social media, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you can send you can just comment here, and she would love to read it. Then
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So,
I'd love to hear from you anywhere. Like, get into my
sure.
inbox. No problem.
It's yes, it's a very important book, guys. Trust me. Thank you so much for everyone who was asking questions. Hope Pooja answered them to your wishes, and we look forward to so much more from you. Of course, Gangster on the Run and the Front Page Murders is there, and you can pick up those books as well. But I would request you to start from Homebound, because this is quite contemporary, relevant, and a very important book. Thank you so much, Pooja. This has been
Thank
a pleasure, and yeah, keep writing these extremely researched books. Thank you so much.
you. Thank you so much, Rohan. It was an honor, and I had so much fun, and I did not realize that 36 minutes have passed.
Oh
So
yes, oh
this
yes.
was
We
a
could have talked about this. I actually went soft on some of the subjects, but next time around I
हाँ
won't
and
be
I'm
so.
like इतनी जल्दी क्यों खत्म कर रहा है तो I just saw the time and it's like yeah that where the time
So
is up.
yeah, I mean, we look forward to more in the future, of course, and glad we talked about this book. Thank you so much, and
Thank
of
you,
course, shout out to HarperCollins before we leave. Thank you so
thank
much,
you,
Harper. You are delving into these books which are extremely relevant. Thank you so much.
thank you for having me, Rohan.
Yeah,
I had a lot of fun talking to you.
yeah, sure. Thank you so much. See you soon.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.